It's time for Twitter to do their monthly dead horse beating, but this time, I actually think they might be justified. You see, sentiment in the Street Fighter 6 community is reaching an all-time low, and the consumer's patience is being tested. And if you stick to the end of this video, I have the stats to prove it's not just in your or my head. There's facts. We can back it up. Let's get on into it. So you see here, we know that Mai is supposed to be releasing in early 2025, and her initial announcement trailer, it was actually slated for winter of 2025. So we know it must either be coming in January or February, as March is the beginning of spring. And with the fact that with last December, the only DLC content we actually received from Capcom was this Buckler Holiday Brawl DLC pass, which was of course just more content for World Tour. There's a lot of negative reaction because people are fed up with the fact that the main game mode, which is the versus mode in Street Fighter 6, has pretty much no content being released for it at a steady rate. Meanwhile, people who are doing, role plays in Battle Hub and are obsessed with World Tour mode are being fed consistent DLC for customizing their World Tour avatar. And I had this tweet here back then a month ago. I understand we are in a small bubble of a niche on FGC Twitter, but I have such a hard time believing there is really a larger audience out there buying enough avatar customizations that the dev team completely forgoes doing literally any main cast costumes or colors. It's been over a year. In fact, it's been, I believe, 19 months since the game was released, and we've only had one DLC pack of costumes for the cast, and we've had a pretty slow rate of DLC characters relative to past Street Fighter titles, comparing to Street Fighter V, and just compared to games of this size that are of a live service model. And this week got mixed reviews at the time. A lot of people were saying, oh, the costumes they're so much more detailed in Street Fighter V, and they put so much more love and attention to the characters. And it's like, yeah, you might have a point, but it's still hard to understand who is buying these costumes, even though there definitely is a large audience for this kind of DLC Battle Pass gear for the World Tour avatars. And it's probably easier to produce, and therefore maybe the profit margins are just so high that it doesn't matter that they're not producing more mainstream DLC content. Maybe there's a bunch of whales buying this stuff up and they're just making tons of money for a low amount of investment. It's hard to know because we have zero communication from the devs. Slowly, this resentment has been building amongst the more core audience who cares about like the main competitive mode of Street Fighter, which in my opinion, call me elitist, I still think the versus mode in Street Fighter is the main mode, but maybe the economics and the audience is actually proving me otherwise. Who knows? But this resentment has come to a head with the latest announcement because people were hoping maybe Mai was coming this month, get avatar gear inspired by a time following orders, an explosive new challenger screen effect, and play the classic game 19XX, The War Against Destiny in the Game Center. So yes, instead of getting Mai this month, that means the only winter month remaining would be February. Mai will be released next February. So instead it's another battle pass for World Tour avatar gear with some classic gaming references that I guess some people care about. And, this would be normally harmless and offensive, just updates for people who care about that sort of content. But it's reaching a critical mass where people are tired of not having costumes and DLC characters for the main game, and the community reactions were pretty funny. Shuckle here says, invest millions into the prize pools for the competitive side of the game. 99% of the post-launch support has nothing to do with the competitive side of the game. What is this marketing strategy? It's pretty confusing, right? Capcom Pro Tour has $1 million for the first place prize. They've invested into doing the World Tour. There's multiple events all over the planet. They provide some funding for all of the World Warrior events, right? They're putting a lot of money into the Capcom Pro Tour, but at the same time, they're doing nothing to make the actual Pro Tour look more appealing, right? Just even having more costumes in the Pro Tour helps advertise the costumes itself and adds visual variety to the game itself to make it more appealing. So it does seem like they don't really value the marketing they're getting out of the Pro Tour because all of the investment keeps going back into the Battle Hub. So it's definitely sending mixed signals here. Matt McMuscle says, Capcom, whenever they announce more avatar gear. Comment after comment on this post is just negative reactions from the community. If you look at the main post itself beyond the quote tweets here, it's just people pissed. Everyone is pissed that we keep getting more avatar gear and aren't getting any actual costumes or main cast DLC characters. People are missing the Street Fighter V rate of costume DLC. They might not be missing the actual game itself, but at least there was a bit more live service in the Street Fighter V live service than in Street Fighter 6. Javits says, I'm honestly confused why they won't make new costumes for characters. The whole community is basically screaming for them and saying, please take my money. Yeah, a lot of people like to use the excuse that the devs cooked up with how much higher quality the production of the costumes is, and it does show in the qualities, right? They're actually doing actual mesh materials for the costumes themselves, and I don't know the technical details thoroughly. They did a whole media piece on that to explain the details that are going into the actual production of the costumes, because, you know, Street Fighter V costumes, for example, had a lot of issues with clipping. They were kind of just layered onto the model itself, so they often had little details that didn't quite add up, or, you know, you have like famous moments like M. Bison pulling off his hat that isn't on his head in his alternate costumes, or Ibuki pulling down her mask, which doesn't exist in the alternate costumes. So sometimes the animations didn't line up with the costumes itself, so they're taking a lot more care with the DLC costumes they put out in that first year pack. But at some point, you know, quality versus quantity, so you got to have some of both. You can't be making that balance if there's literally nothing. So they have one DLC costume pack and over 19 months of the game being released. It's not enough, especially with the limited number of base costumes in the game and base colors, and the fact that you have to play World Tour to unlock the colors. Like, I don't have so many colors unlocked because I don't play the single player content. It just makes the visual variety of the game very stale very quick. Broski says, Alexa, play Hurt by Johnny Cash. I heard. Groovy here says, whoa, man. Chill. All right, I know it sucks. It's not that serious though, bro. Let's relax a little. It ain't that serious. Scotia, pardon me. They say last character was September last year. Last main roster outfits were December 2023. Mai not coming out till the end of February. Released the worst battle pass yet. Somehow still massively popular in Japan. Street Fighter 6 is the most failing upwards game that ever fell upwards. Yeah, the weird part about all this is the contrast between the release and the player count and the current and sustained success of the game versus the support. The game is objectively extremely successful and had the greatest potentially fighting game launch of all time. You can definitely make an argument for that. Maybe you could argue that like games like Mortal Kombat launch more successfully. I don't know. It's a bit more complex than just sales numbers. But Street Fighter 6 was unanimously well received and was a complete and thorough package and was a great product for consumers of all lanes, right? If you're a casual or a dedicated hardcore enthusiast, it was a great product on release. But the post-patch support has been, or post-release support has been abysmal, at least for people who care about the more hardcore and dedicated players. There's been nothing to sustain the main game modes. Now, maybe the numbers don't really tell the whole picture. We don't have enough granular detail about the numbers. Maybe this game is being kept alive by all the people role-playing in the Battle Hub and putting on their Chipotle and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles outfits. I don't know. That could be the reality of the situation here. It's hard to tell without having those numbers. Like, there might be a silent majority that is just buying and using these cosmetics. But it does feel like this game has had a really, really poor post-launch support, especially relative to how amazing the launch was. And at the same time, it's still extremely active. We still have like 20,000 plus active players daily. Great numbers for a fighting game. It's just a weird situation. JB here says, FGC, where are the character costumes? It's been more than a year. We waited so long. My Street Fighter 6 avatar. Yeah, it's like, as long as you care about the Street Fighter 6 avatar, man, you're happy. You're being well fed, for sure. If you're trying to get a new costume for your main, good luck. We might not ever see any of those ever again at this rate. And here's Guile Win quote. He was just recently on Trash Talk, coming here with his trash takes. Come on, man, we're supposed to be pissed. He says here, I know we're tired of this, but the Cannon Spike stickers are kind of cool because they acknowledge fallen Balrog. Yeah, so there's they are always adding little references to fighting game history and character design from also just Capcom's history as well. So there is little neat stuff in there for people interested in gaming in Capcom and Street Fighter history. So props for that, I guess. But we're supposed to have our pitchforks out right now, man. We can't be giving props for this. Come on. And in case you're still sitting there saying, oh, this is actually normal. This is normal post-launch support. Everything is fine. I do want to compare this to the actual stats compared to Street Fighter V's release timeline. And a lot of people will say, well, you know, Street Fighter V released with 2 less characters and also was in abysmal shape. Don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to compare the launch itself. Street Fighter V is dog water compared to Street Fighter 6 release. Not even a comparison. Please don't twist my words on that or get the wrong perspective. I just want to compare the post-launch support to see where we are today, 19 months later after the release. And, shout out to Event Hubs. They put together this DLC character release timeline, which demonstrates, at least for the main cast characters, when all these characters released. So here you can see that it's a pretty rapid release rate for characters. And I have the stats to back this up comparing the two games. Street Fighter 6 release date was June 2nd, 2023. 19 months since release, that's today. By this time, we had 18 characters on release and 6 DLC characters for 24 total characters. Street Fighter 5 released on February 16th, 2016. 19 months post-release was September 16th, 2017. And you can see here on the timeline, that would be after Up to Manat had released, which means they had 11 DLC characters by this time. At this time in Street Fighter V's history, it had 27 total characters. Meanwhile, we have 24 in Street Fighter 6. So if you're left there feeling like, hey, I feel like the game just doesn't have as much content for the main fighting game players, especially if you are a person who played Street Fighter V from release, you're correct. Objectively, there's less characters in the game right now. There's 3 less total characters, and I'm fairly certain less costumes. So the way the DLC worked for the costumes in Street Fighter V is they didn't release packs for the entire cast all at once. Occasionally, they would have packs that covered more characters, but often they would release and be prejudiced to certain characters, which is why we ended up with like 13 billion Chun-Li costumes, which might be a similar situation to why we're seeing so much Battle Hub content. The meme was the Street Fighter V Chun-Li fanboys were paying the bills to keep Street Fighter V alive. So it might be a similar situation here. It's hard to know if they're being reactive with the Battle Hub stuff, or this was something that was planned long in advance and they have to just complete the development cycle because they contractually agreed to do it. But if you go through the Steam DLC archives here, you can see at least by September 2017, there was the 2016 and 2017 Premiere Pass. And I believe there was a lot more DLC costumes released. There was other in-game currency modes in order to purchase costumes, which weren't like through the Steam DLC page. So I don't have the complete history documented here, but I think it's safe to say that you had more than 2 to 3 costumes per character at this point, and some characters probably had a lot more, and there's a lot more colors as well. So not only did Street Fighter V at this point in its lifespan have more characters, it also had more costumes as well. Once again, not comparing the quality of the games at these times, Street Fighter 6, even into Season 2, was a much more thorough product. There was many more game modes, and there's a lot more love and care put into the game. Please don't start doing this whole weird Street Fighter V versus Street Fighter 6 thing in the comments. I promise you that is not the angle of this video. I'm just trying to provide context for why people are perceiving this lack of post-launch support and why people might be coming to like a critical mass of frustration with how the main game modes are not being supported. That's all I got for this video. Let me know what you guys think about the post-launch support for Street Fighter 6. Are you frustrated that there's not more costumes? Are you okay with this this rate of content release? Are you just critical of people who are so dopamine deprived in this modern era that we constantly need to be drip fed new content to sustain our interest in a fighting game? I don't know. You might be right. Our brains are probably fried. Thanks for watching.